know about you, but when I build a boat, my workshop just gets filthy disgusting. There's sawdust all over the place, and every now and then I get on this cleaning binge and start to clean things up. So, what am I doing today? I'm doing part 5 of this Hasty Hydro build, and today we're going to try and put together the transom. So here's what I'm going to do differently from the original plans. Come on and have a look here. The original plans for the transom call for the frame to be made, and it's a total of 14 inches tall. And then the original plans call for a separate motor board here that gets fastened to the back of the transom with a couple of wedges to put it at that 15 or 16 degree angle that's required for the motor. Now, what I've decided to do, and this is a suggestion made by a good friend of mine, Rob Abbott, is I've decided to incorporate the motor board into the transom itself. Now, we've modified the full-size plans, and I've made an option here to make an alternate transom frame, and we're going to increase the height of the transom by 2 inches, and that'll bring it up to the necessary standard motor board height for a short shaft motor. So here's the original plans here, and you can see my coffee stain. You have to drink coffee while you're building boats. So I'm going to try and walk you through this process. I'm going to extend the top of the transom by 2 inches here, and then add a little 1/4 inch along the bottom frame of the transom, because what we're going to do is we're actually going to angle the whole transom frame back by about 15 degrees. On the original plans, the motor board is 90 degrees to the bottom plank. But because we want the motor board and the transom to be all one component, we're going to have to angle the motor board back. On our plans, I put that angle right on the side planks here. So you can see I've made this angle, and it's at 77.5 degrees. And instead of the transom going up at 90 degrees, we're going to angle the whole transom back. So because it's angling back, that 2 inches we're adding, which is going to be a total of 16 inches, because of the angle, it's going to come to about 15.5 inches, which is the perfect height for a short shaft motor. So the full-size plans have this modification on it. These are the full-size plans we're looking at, and it says for alternate transom frame, increase height of transom by 2 inches. So it's essentially up to you. If you want to make the transom as in the original Hasty Hydro plans, you're good to go. But if you want the motor board and the transom to be all incorporated into one, then I've made the additional modifications here. And then on the lower transom frame, we're adding a 1/4 inch because we have to cut the lower transom frame on an angle. Alright, so here's where we are right now. I've glued on the left and right transom frame pieces. I'm going to cut those out with my jigsaw, and then the upper and lower transom frame, I've glued the upper transom frame to my piece of wood here. Remember, I'm adding 2 inches, so instead of 3 5/8 inches total height, the total height will be 5 5/8 inches. I'm just going to set my fence to my saw here for the appropriate distance and rip it across here. And then the lower transom frame, because I need to bevel off the lower edge of the transom frame. Instead of the total height being 3 5/8 inches, I have to add another 1/4 inch, which means it's going to be 3 7/8 inches. So again, I'm just going to set my fence on my saw to 3 7/8 and cut it along here. So let's just recap where we are. I've taken my full-size 1/4 inch plywood transom template and I've glued it to my 1/4 inch stock. Remember, since this is the modified version of the transom, I've cut my plywood, or I'm going to cut my plywood 1/4 of an inch lower here because I need to bevel the bottom edge of this. It's going to go on an angle. The other thing I've done is I have added 2 inches to the top of the original plans because this is now going to be the top of the motor board that's built into the transom. I have my frame pieces already cut out and I can just place them on my paper template here, and it just kind of fits together like a really cool little jigsaw puzzle. Like this, and like this. So I'm going to take my plywood now and I'm going to cut it out using my jigsaw and my table saw, and then we can start assembling. So here's what I've decided to do with this transom. Just because I wanted my seams to be very, very tight between each reinforcing board, what I've done is I've clamped them here and I've just run some glue in there. I haven't actually attached it to the plywood yet because I want to make sure that these seams are going to be very, very tight. So I've just done a little bit of a glue in there. I'm going to let that set up and dry. Same thing with this side here. And I put clamps on just to make this joint really, really tight. I haven't glued it in here yet. These aren't glued yet. I'm going to wait till this sets up and then I'm going to glue this one in. And then once all of these pieces are glued together, then I'm going to flip the whole thing over and then screw the plywood in from the underside. That way I'm going to ensure that these seams here are very tight. Now that the glue has dried on my transom frame here, I'm going to flip everything over and I am going to fasten the plywood backing to my frame. So I'm going to glue all into here and I'm going to screw it together. Now for this, I've decided to go with number 8 3/4 inch stainless steel screws, just because if any water is going to accumulate in a boat, it's going to be at the transom area. So I'm just going to put some stainless steel screws in here. I'm going to countersink them, and then once that's on, then I'm going to flip the whole thing back over again. There, so all the screws are in now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my transom over. You can see how this is nice and tight. I'm going to clean up my grip marks and work on putting in the reinforcing pieces of lumber for here, because remember, this is going to be the whole incorporated motor board, and I've got to make sure that I've got enough strength in this part of the transom to hold the motor. All right, I flipped the boat back over, and now I'm going to do a test fit of my transom here. So, just to recap, this transom is going to be angled back at 77.5 degrees, so it's going to angle back this way. That way, I don't have to have a separate motor board that's on an angle. The whole transom is going to be angled back. So what I need to do is I need to bevel off the bottom edge of the transom at that 77.5 degree angle. So on my table saw, I don't know if you can see it there, I've set the angle of my blade to as close to 12.5 degrees as I can, and if I come up here, you can actually see the angle of the blade there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run the motor board right across the table saw and make that cut. Here's the 12.5 degrees of the 77.5 degree angle that I've sliced on my transom slash motor board. So I want to make sure that the surface of this fits flush against the bottom plank here. So in order to do that, I've wedged the two top parts of the side planks, brought them out, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Take two. That way, when I actually drop the motor board in position, it's not going to bind on the sides here. What it has done, however, is it has warped the bottom of the hull. And if I hold this board up here, you can see that it actually curves down on either side. That's not going to be a problem, because what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to fasten it to the center part here, and then once I have good contact at the center, then I'm going to take this wedge out. That will then straighten up either side here, and then I can continue to fasten the motor board along each side plank. Well, there we have it. The transom is in place. It's not perfect. I've got a couple of gaps along the corners in here, but 1/8 of an inch gap there that I filled in with some wood filler. It's pretty tight along here, and I've got a tiny gap in the corner there. But it's solid, and I'm just going to let the glue dry up here. I've got the bar clamps on it, and I'm going to keep the bar clamps on for a little while just to make sure that the glue sets up. And that's how you install the transom and the motor board. So I'm just going to grab a coffee here, and I'll see you later.